I've only had a couple of times in my life when I was carefree, like a period of a couple of years when I thought, you know what, I don't have really any responsibilities. I'm making enough money. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm seeing these chicks here and those over there, you know.
It's been 21 years since Hollywood's most unpredictable love story fell apart. Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie. Their passion once burned too bright for the world to look away. But behind the wild headlines and whispers of blood vows was a heartbreak few ever saw. Now, decades later, Billy Bob finally breaks his silence, revealing the real reason their fairy tale ended in quiet pain and lasting respect. The man who hides behind the spotlight. Billy Bob Thornton was never the kind of man who enjoyed bright lights or red carpets. He came from a small town in Arkansas, where life was quiet, slow, and grounded in simple things. His childhood was far from easy. He grew up with a father who worked as a school teacher and coach, and a mother who tried her best to keep the family together through hard times. Those early years shaped him into a storyteller, a dreamer, and a man who found peace in solitude rather than in fame. When he first came to Hollywood, he didn't dream of being a star. He wanted to write and tell stories that felt real. He often said he was more comfortable behind the camera or in a recording studio than being surrounded by photographers or interviewers. When his film Sling Blade came out in 1996, everything changed. The movie made him a household name, earning him an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay and even an acting nomination. But the attention brought something he never wanted: fame. Suddenly, people wanted to know everything about him, from what he wore to who he was dating. The man who used to write songs in a quiet room was now expected to live like a movie star. It made him uncomfortable, even anxious. Instead of enjoying the limelight, Billy Bob began to avoid it. He would joke that every time a marriage ended, he would move into the Sunset Marquis Hotel to hide from the world. Behind his rough humor and southern charm, there was always a deep loneliness. He often said he loved people, but didn't like being around them too much. It was not arrogance, it was shyness that bordered on fear. He loved music more than fame, small rooms more than parties, and quiet dinners more than events. Hollywood never quite understood him. He was the man who would write hauntingly beautiful scripts and then vanish for months to avoid the noise that followed success. Friends described him as kind but withdrawn, creative but restless. He carried a sadness that only showed up when he spoke about love and the way it slipped away from him time and again. Despite all his success, Billy Bob longed for something most people take for granted: a simple, lasting love. He believed in marriage even when it failed him. He kept trying, not because he enjoyed the chase, but because he believed love could heal him. He often said he was not trying to be a playboy. He just wanted to find someone who could make him feel at peace in a world that never stopped moving. Over the years, he built walls around his emotions, using humor to cover up pain. But deep down, he knew that behind every film, every song, and every marriage, there was a quiet man searching for calm. People who worked with him noticed how he came alive when telling stories, not about himself, but about others. He loved to sit in a corner and talk about old music, broken dreams, and strange characters from small towns. He understood loneliness better than most. That was what made him such a good writer and actor. His pain gave life to his art. Yet, as his fame grew, so did the feeling that he was being swallowed by a world he never asked for. He found himself caught between the person the world saw and the one he really was. Yet, as he searched for peace, each new marriage dragged him deeper into chaos, until one fateful meeting changed everything. A trail of broken vows. By the time the late 1990s arrived, Billy Bob Thornton had already been through 4 marriages. Each relationship began with hope and ended with silence. The public saw a man who could not stay married, but those who knew him saw something else. They saw a man who tried too hard to hold on to love that always seemed to slip through his fingers. His first marriage was to Melissa Lee Gatlin in 1978. They had a daughter, Amanda, the following year. It should have been a time of joy, but Billy Bob's growing career and constant work created distance between them. He was trying to find his place in Hollywood, while still figuring out who he was. The marriage eventually collapsed under the pressure, and Amanda grew up mostly with her mother. Years later, tragedy would strike when Amanda was sentenced to prison in 2008, accused in the death of a friend's child. The news devastated Billy Bob. He rarely spoke about it, but those close to him said it broke something deep inside him. He carried guilt and sadness, as if he had failed both as a husband and as a father. After Melissa came Toni Lawrence, an actress he married in 1986. Their relationship was short, lasting only 2 years. She later described him as talented but troubled. Billy Bob had begun to gain recognition as an actor and writer, but fame didn't bring happiness. It only added more confusion to his already restless soul. He wanted love, but he also wanted freedom. The two desires often pulled him in opposite directions. Next came actress Cinda Williams in 1990. She was beautiful, confident, and kind, and Billy Bob believed for a moment that he had found stability. They even appeared together in films like One False Move, but she later admitted that they were better as friends than as husband and wife. Their marriage ended in 1992, leaving behind more disappointment and another layer of emotional fatigue. In 1993, he married Pietra Dawn Cherny, a former Playboy model. Together, they had 2 sons, William and Harry. For a while, it looked like Billy Bob had finally built a family he could hold on to, but cracks appeared once again. Pietra accused him of being physically abusive, claiming that he had frightened her and their children. Billy Bob denied it, saying the accusations were exaggerated and unfair. The divorce became public and messy, another reminder that even when he tried to do things right, the outcome always turned wrong. By the late 1990s, Hollywood began to see him as unpredictable. He was talented, yes, but also mysterious and difficult to understand. He played characters who were damaged, lonely, or misunderstood, perhaps because they reflected his own heart. Deep down, Billy Bob wanted what everyone wants: to love and be loved in return. He was tired of being the man who always ended up alone. Still, he never gave up on love. Even after 4 failed marriages, he was ready to try again, believing that maybe this time would be different. Then came the film Pushing Tin in 1999. Billy Bob was cast alongside a rising star named Angelina Jolie. She was younger, full of energy, and carried the same kind of wild spirit that he once had. Their connection was instant and electric, something neither of them expected. It was not planned, but it felt inevitable. Then, on the set of a film about air traffic controllers, he met someone who would flip his world upside down. The wild beginning with Angelina. When Billy Bob Thornton met Angelina Jolie on the set of Pushing Tin in 1999, he was already a man worn out by love. She, on the other hand, was a rising star with a spirit that seemed untamed. The moment they began working together, something electric happened between them. It was not just attraction. It was as if 2 people who had spent their lives misunderstood suddenly recognized themselves in each other. Billy Bob was engaged to actress Laura Dern at the time, and Angelina was seeing actor Timothy Hutton. Yet their connection felt too powerful to ignore. They shared a strange comfort that quickly turned into passion. Their relationship moved at a lightning pace. Within months, Billy Bob had broken off his engagement to Laura Dern. Laura would later say that she left for a movie shoot and came back to find out that her boyfriend had married someone else without even a phone call. Hollywood was stunned when Billy Bob and Angelina eloped in Las Vegas on May 5, 2000. There were no grand plans, no public announcements, just 2 people chasing something that felt real in a world full of fake smiles. They wore jeans and t-shirts, exchanged silver wedding bands, and walked out of the chapel hand in hand, laughing like teenagers. The media could not get enough of them. Angelina was wild, free-spirited, and unpredictable, while Billy Bob was dark, intense, and eccentric. Together, they created the image of a couple living by their own rules. They appeared on red carpets, kissing passionately, whispering secrets, and holding each other as if they were the only 2 people in the room. To outsiders, it looked like obsession, but to them, it felt like pure honesty. Angelina even tattooed his name, Billy Bob, on her arm as a symbol of their devotion. They bought a home together in Beverly Hills and spent their days making music, writing, and traveling together. Their love was strange, but genuine. Billy Bob often said that Angelina brought out his playful side. She made him feel young again, full of curiosity and daring. He loved that she was unafraid of the world. She, in turn, admired his deep sensitivity and raw creativity. They understood each other's darkness in ways no one else could. At award shows, they held hands like teenagers in love. During interviews, they spoke openly about their passion, shocking the media with their blunt honesty. People could not decide whether to admire them or mock them. Still, there were signs that their love might burn out as fast as it had begun. Billy Bob's old insecurities began to return. He was used to hiding from the world, but Angelina was always out there in front of it. She was curious about everything: people, cultures, and causes, while he preferred quiet nights at home. Yet, in those early days, they managed to meet in the middle. They laughed often, took spontaneous road trips, and talked for hours about life, pain, and love. The moment that defined their early relationship came when they started wearing small lockets around their necks. Inside each locket was a tiny drop of the other's blood. It was meant to be a symbol of closeness, something private and personal. But when the story leaked to the press, it exploded. Suddenly, they were labeled as the vampire couple of Hollywood. Billy Bob later explained that it was nothing dark, just a romantic gesture. But by then, the world had already decided that their love was strange. Their marriage was passionate, wild, and unpredictable. They had moments of laughter that felt endless and fights that left them in tears. They were both intense people who loved deeply but lived differently. For a while, that intensity held them together. But behind that fire, something dark and fragile was already taking root. Blood, fame, and the madness of love. Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie's marriage became one of the most talked-about relationships in Hollywood. To the public, they were wild and strange, but to them, their love felt sacred. They did not care what others thought. They lived with a deep emotional connection that was both beautiful and destructive. Their life together became a mix of passion, mystery, and confusion. They shared everything: work, art, laughter, and even silence. Their necklaces became the most famous symbol of their love. The rumor was that they wore vials of each other's blood. Billy Bob later explained that it was not as dramatic as people made it sound. The lockets were small and contained only a drop of blood, something personal to remind them of each other when they were apart. But the media twisted the story, turning it into something bizarre. Every magazine and TV show exaggerated it, calling them Hollywood's strangest couple. The more the media talked, the more misunderstood they became. Billy Bob once said that the world made their simple love story sound like a horror film. Despite the chaos around them, there were moments of real tenderness. They supported each other's work and dreams. Angelina would visit Billy Bob in the recording studio while he worked on his music, and he would encourage her when she took on daring film roles. Their chemistry was undeniable. Yet, deep beneath that closeness, their differences began to grow. Angelina's heart was drawn to the world. She was passionate about helping others and often talked about traveling to distant places. Billy Bob, on the other hand, preferred the quiet comfort of home. Crowds and social gatherings made him anxious. The more she moved outward, the more he turned inward. In 2002, Angelina decided to adopt a child from Cambodia. She named him Maddox. Billy Bob was supportive at first, but soon he realized that their paths were no longer the same. He loved the idea of family but feared the change that came with it. Angelina wanted to build a life full of purpose, while Billy Bob wanted to stay in the shadows, away from attention. The adoption made her feel complete, but it also made him feel distant. She began attending events and humanitarian missions, while he stayed home, feeling left behind. The media continued to fuel their image as the unusual lovers, but inside their home, things had grown quiet. The laughter that once filled the rooms was replaced by distance. They began to live separate lives under the same roof. Angelina's growing humanitarian work only made it harder for Billy Bob to connect. He once described himself as almost agoraphobic, preferring to stay home where life felt predictable. That simple truth became the root of their separation. They loved each other deeply, but lived in opposite worlds. When they appeared in public toward the end of their marriage, fans could see that something had changed. The smiles were still there, but the spark was gone. The relationship that once burned bright was slowly dimming. Their differences had grown too wide to bridge, and both of them knew it. What started as a love story built on passion was ending with quiet heartbreak, and soon those cracks would split open, leading to a quiet, heartbreaking goodbye. The breaking point. By 2002, the cracks in Billy Bob Thornton and Angelina Jolie's marriage had become impossible to hide. The couple who once spoke of eternal love was now living in two different worlds. Angelina had grown into an international figure, spending her time traveling to war-torn countries and using her fame to help those in need. Billy Bob, meanwhile, had become quieter and more withdrawn. He preferred the stillness of home, where he could write music, watch old movies, or sit alone with his thoughts. The same differences that once made them curious about each other had now become the reason for their distance. When Angelina adopted Maddox from Cambodia, it was meant to bring joy into their lives, but instead, it revealed how far apart they had grown. Billy Bob loved the child, yet he struggled to adjust to the sudden change in their family life. He often said he was a simple man who didn't like too many new things happening at once. Angelina, however, was full of life, always moving, always chasing something bigger. The gap between them widened with every passing month. They began to spend less and less time together, and soon their relationship was held together only by memories of how it once felt. The media, which had once celebrated them as Hollywood's wildest lovers, now began to sense the tension. They noticed that the couple was no longer seen together at events. Rumors spread that their marriage was falling apart, and for once, the tabloids were right. Angelina was seen attending humanitarian trips alone, while Billy Bob avoided interviews and public appearances. In private, he admitted to close friends that he felt like he no longer belonged in her world. He described himself as the square peg in a round hole, a man too ordinary for the extraordinary woman he loved. In July 2002, Angelina officially filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. It was a quiet ending to a loud love story. The court documents were simple, but behind those words was deep sadness. Billy Bob later confessed that he had felt unworthy of her. In interviews years later, he said, "I never felt good enough for her. I was afraid of her, not because she was mean or anything, but because she was so full of life, so beautiful, and I was just me." His words reflected a man who had loved deeply, but had been consumed by his own insecurities. When the divorce was finalized in May 2003, both of them went their separate ways without bitterness. Angelina focused on raising Maddox and continuing her humanitarian work. Billy Bob retreated to music, writing, and smaller film projects that gave him peace. Friends say he often looked back on that time with a quiet sense of wonder. He didn't regret loving her. He only regretted not being able to hold on to her. In an interview years later, he said that the main reason their marriage ended was lifestyle differences. Hers was a global lifestyle, he explained, and mine was an agoraphobic lifestyle. That's the only reason we're probably not still together. Despite the heartbreak, there was no hatred. Billy Bob never spoke badly of Angelina, and she never said a harsh word about him. The world expected anger, but what came instead was a strange kind of peace. They had loved each other deeply, but they had also learned that love alone was not enough when two people live in opposite worlds. The end of their marriage was not marked by drama, but by quiet acceptance. Angelina moved forward, building her family and career, while Billy Bob found comfort in the shadows again. Yet deep inside, he carried the memory of their brief but powerful love story. It had changed him forever, teaching him what connection could feel like and what it meant to lose it. Yet, instead of bitterness, what he said about her years later stunned everyone. Respect after ruin. When Billy Bob Thornton spoke about Angelina Jolie years after their divorce, people expected anger or regret. Instead, what they heard was something very different. He spoke about her with warmth and admiration. He never blamed her for what happened, and he never tried to rewrite their story to make himself look better. He called her a wonderful person and said he would always consider her a close friend. His voice softened whenever he mentioned her name, and it was clear that even after all the chaos, he still held deep respect for the woman who had once turned his world upside down. He said he looked back at their time together as a beautiful chapter in his life. "We had a great time," he once said in an interview. "Angie is still a friend of mine, and she's a great person. She's done so much for the world and continues to do so." His words surprised many because Hollywood breakups rarely end so kindly. But Billy Bob had grown since those wild early days. He was no longer the restless man searching for love in every direction. He had learned to slow down and understand that sometimes people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to teach us something about ourselves. Angelina, too, spoke about him with kindness. In a 2005 interview, she said that they had simply grown into different people. "In a year, I became who I am today, and he became who he is today," she said. Then, suddenly, we had nothing to say to each other. Her words weren't cruel, they were honest. They both accepted that their paths had diverged. The world saw their relationship as dramatic, but in truth, its ending was quiet and mature. They had both loved deeply, and then walked away when they realized love could not bridge their differences. Over time, they found peace in their separate lives. Angelina continued to grow as an actress and humanitarian. She traveled, directed films, and became a strong voice for refugees and women's rights. Billy Bob, on the other hand, focused on his music, acting in smaller films and writing. He said he was happiest when he could spend hours in the studio, creating something that felt real. Fame no longer tempted him, and he avoided Hollywood parties. He had finally accepted that he was not built for that world. People were surprised to learn that even years after their divorce, Angelina stayed in touch with Billy Bob's family. She would send birthday and Christmas gifts to his son, showing that the kindness between them never faded. It was proof that not all endings have to be bitter. Their bond had simply changed shape. It was no longer romantic, but it was still built on respect. Billy Bob often talked about how Angelina's influence had helped him see life differently. He admired her courage and independence. He said she had taught him that you could live for something greater than yourself. She had gone on to make films that told stories of real people and their struggles, and he respected that deeply. He said he understood her now more than he did when they were together. "She's a person who follows her heart completely," he said, "and I'll always admire that." Through his music and interviews, he let people see that peace had replaced regret. He was grateful for the love they shared, and even more grateful that it ended before resentment took its place. Life had taught him that endings can be gentle when both people choose understanding over anger. And in that wisdom, he found love again. This time, the calm he had been chasing all along, the final peace. After his stormy years of love, loss, and loneliness, Billy Bob Thornton finally found something he had been searching for his entire life: peace. It did not come through fame, success, or wild romance. It came quietly, through someone who understood him completely. Her name was Connie Angland. She was not a Hollywood star or a public figure. She was part of the film world, but preferred to stay behind the camera. Billy Bob met her in 2003 while working on Bad Santa, just as his marriage to Angelina Jolie had ended. Unlike his past relationships, there was no whirlwind, no drama, no attention from the press. It started simply as friendship and understanding between two people who both preferred quiet moments over red carpets. Connie saw the real Billy Bob, not the celebrity, or the man with 5 failed marriages, but the gentle soul who loved music, storytelling, and silence. Their connection grew naturally over time. They didn't rush into marriage. Instead, they built a life together that felt calm and safe. For the first time, Billy Bob didn't have to explain who he was or pretend to be something he wasn't. He often said that with Connie, he could finally breathe. They spent evenings cooking, watching old movies, and writing songs. There were no flashing cameras or gossip magazines, just two people who fit perfectly together. In 2004, they welcomed their daughter, Bella. She became the center of Billy Bob's world. He often talked about how being a father again gave him a new sense of purpose. Bella was homeschooled, and Billy Bob loved being part of her daily life. Whenever he was not filming or performing music, he was home helping her study or playing guitar while she sang along. After years of being haunted by broken family bonds, he finally had a home that felt complete. In interviews, he said that this new chapter of his life made him realize what truly mattered. It was not fame or wealth, but family, comfort, and peace of mind. In 2014, after 11 years together, Billy Bob and Connie quietly married in a private ceremony at their Los Angeles home. There were no headlines or elaborate celebrations. It was just a small, beautiful moment between two people who already knew they belonged to each other. Even GQ magazine described their relationship as perfectly ordinary, which, for Billy Bob, was the highest compliment. He no longer wanted the chaos that came with fame. He wanted peace, and with Connie, he found it. People close to him say that Connie brought balance into his life. She shared his love for privacy and simplicity. They rarely attend public events together, and Billy Bob has said he is happiest when they are at home, away from the world. After years of restlessness, he had finally found stillness. He stopped chasing what he thought love should look like, and instead embraced what love truly feels like: quiet, real, and lasting. Meanwhile, Angelina Jolie continued to rise as a global icon, actress, and humanitarian. Their lives took completely different paths, yet both found purpose in their own ways. There was no bitterness, only mutual respect and the memory of what they once shared. Billy Bob often says that everything he went through, every heartbreak and mistake, led him to where he was meant to be. His past no longer felt like a burden. It became part of his story, one that shaped the man he eventually became. Now in his late 60s, Billy Bob spends most of his time working on music with his band, the Boxmasters, and acting in selective film projects that mean something to him. He no longer seeks validation from Hollywood. He finds it in his work, in his home, and in the laughter of his daughter. For the first time, he is not hiding from the world. He is simply living in it. He once said in an interview, "I used to think I was cursed when it came to love, but maybe all those things happened so I could end up where I am now." His story, once filled with scandal and heartbreak, had finally found its gentle ending. What do you think? Was Angelina truly his forever love, or just the lesson he needed? Share your thoughts below.